Hello, everyone. I'm Asya Jamaludin, a partner from the international law firm CMS based in Singapore. Welcome to Maxwell Unplugged, a female-led podcast series which showcases, empowers, and supports female talent in the legal industry. In each episode, we speak to inspiring women in law about their stories and careers. Today, I am thrilled and honored to be speaking with a true legal luminary, Justice Dato Mary Lim, a recently retired judge of the Federal Court of Malaysia. Her journey through the corridors of justice has been nothing short of inspiring. Justice Lim began her legal voyage at the University of Leeds in the UK, where she read law and earned her LLB honours degree. She was admitted to the Lincoln's Inn as a barrister at law. After serving at the Attorney General's Chambers of Malaysia for about 11 years, Justice Lim, as she herself put it, went back to school when she pursued a Master's of Law degree at the University of Western Australia. While at the AG's Chambers, Justice Lim served in various pivotal roles, including being a federal counsel, the senior federal counsel, senior assistant parliamentary draftsman, legal advisor to the state of Negeri Sembilan, deputy head of civil division, and a commissioner of law revision and law reform. Justice Lim was appointed as the Judicial Commissioner in 2009 and elevated as a judge of the High Court of Malaya in 2010. Initially sitting as a commercial judge, she was the inaugural judge of the Construction Court in Kuala Lumpur, a groundbreaking achievement in my eyes. Justice Lim was then elevated to the Court of Appeal and to the Federal Court, Malaysia's apex court, in 2020. In October 23, you also became an honorary bencher of Lincoln's Inn. Recently, in 2024, Justice Lim retired from the Malaysian judiciary, and based on the comments by Malaysian practitioners, is a loss felt keenly throughout the legal profession. However, obviously not one to slow down. Just recently, in June 2024, Justice Lim was appointed as the chairman of the Pro Tem Committee of the Asian International Arbitration Centre. Her impact extends beyond courtrooms. Justice Lim is a passionate advocate for judicial and legal training. As a qualified advocacy trainer with the Bar Council of Malaysia, she has imparted wisdom to countless legal minds. She has conducted numerous workshops on criminal, civil and appellate advocacy, and has also taught at the Advanced Advocacy course at Keble College, Oxford. This is in addition to her day job. So, dear listeners, join me in welcoming Justice Dato Mary Lim. Justice Lim, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Aisha. What a pleasure. You've just condensed my whole journey.
I'm sorry. That wasn't intentional. But I mean, I think my first thought, really, I wanted to talk a little bit about your journey and experience in legal practice. When you were elevated to the Federal Court of Malaysia, 8 out of the 14 judges were women. And I think at that time, and until very recently, probably only the Federal Court of Malaysia was one of 2 or 3 apex courts in the world that not only had a good gender balance, but was also predominantly female. I wonder if you could talk to us through that moment and how the legal landscape has evolved over the course of your career. I mean, when I started practice in Malaysia, too many years ago, the bench in the higher courts, we're not talking about the magistrates or the sessions court, which came where people came from service, but really the bench in the higher courts were predominantly male, as were senior partners and partners in law firms. It was very difficult as a young lawyer to envisage and to try and see yourself in that position. So what was that like? You're seeing that change in the legal landscape.
Oh, quite a few questions within, it's multiple questions in that one question. I'll try and break it up and respond to what I understand really were the changing moments, not just in my life, my career, but I think in the whole legal and judicial landscape for Malaysia and globally, actually. I want to take that first point about Malaysia standing with the other jurisdictions in having a female predominant judiciary. I think I may not be wrong if I say we probably were the only one that was female predominant at the apex court. Several other jurisdictions like Canada and Australia probably had their lady chief justice, but I don't think she had the numbers with her like we did. In 2020, as you correctly put it, there were 8 or 14 out of 14 of us who were women. At that moment, I don't think it was designed. It was ordained, I believe, by the far higher ups, and it was a much-awaited moment. I think the papers carried it in very strong terms. I can't quite recall what it was about how this, it's going, women, it's the federal court rocks. I think that was the word that was the headline in one of the dailies. The federal court was going to now rock with these women. And I think that word conjures up more than one sense or one meaning. And we definitely did. So that moment, it was such an honor, such a pleasure, and it was a moment that was long in coming. It gave us a lot of strength, but I could also see how unnerving and a little bit disquieting for my brothers, who for a long time were so comfortable in their own space, in their own, and suddenly there were just so many more of us. And very quickly in the anteroom and in our little social moments, the brothers would say, hey, what about our rights? Now we're the minority. So there were a little bit of jibing here and there. Very proud moment, not just for us, but for the country and, as I said, globally. It was, when you mentioned about predominant for a long time, I think it's in the private, probably not in the private sector. I don't think there are enough women in the managerial, in the executive positions, in the legal sector. I can't speak with statistics or any empirical data, but I do know as far as the public service is concerned, because of education, because of the population, how it has changed, that we had a larger representation of women in the legal service. There were more and more women taking the heads of division positions. So something had to be done. So I can't say about the private sector. I don't think the private sector can proudly say, like the government sector, there were so many women in charge.
Well, I think what happens in the private sector, we have a lot of women who go to law school, right? And then we all start our career. When you're doing your pupillage or your training, there's a lot of women. But what happens is that there's a huge attrition rate when it comes to middle category lawyers. And I think there is a huge attrition rate amongst women in the middle category lawyers here in Singapore. And I think that's reflected everywhere. So what happens, I suppose, you start off your career and then you find that you just cannot proceed. And that could be because the system doesn't give you the support or it's just not set up. And a lot of the times it's family concerns. I wonder if we can then perhaps just talk about that a little bit, what it means to have that family support or the support of people around you in furthering your career.
Thanks. I think for that, I want to tie up with a little aspect of the earlier question about women. Many positions were helmed, this is public service, were helmed by our brothers. And then we had this Attorney General who decided that things had to change because there were just so many women. And they were very, very good women. And there was absolutely no reason why they couldn't take what was otherwise perceived as male roles. And he started making changes. And that was the late Tan Sri Mokhtar Abdullah, who was seconded from the judiciary to become the Attorney General in that time. And the role that I'm talking about is the legal advisor of the state, of all the states in Malaysia. And they were always helmed by male Muslims. And Tan Sri Mokhtar, I think what he did for women must be recognized. He recommended, and his recommendations, because of who he was accepted by both His Royal Highness the Sultan of Selangor at that time, and also by the politicians, and they accepted Zahra Ibrahim to become the first lady state legal advisor. Ali Zatul then went on to become the second in Penang, and then I was the third.
Yeah.
But when I became one, the big difference was I was the first Chinese to, remember I said, by male and by Muslims. I'm female and I'm not a Muslim. And Tan Sri Mokhtar felt that there was absolutely no reason why a Chinese or a non-Muslim cannot helm that position. After all, you're just dealing with legal matters. You're not dealing with the actual religious principles. Those are always outside the domain of the lawyers. And His Royal Highness accepted the recommendation of Tan Sri Mokhtar, and I went on to serve the state of Negeri Sembilan. And when I recall when I went, His Royal Highness, the Regent Tunku Nakiuddin, who was the Yam Tuan at that time, because Almarhum had gone on to become the king of the country, said to me how appropriate that it was for me to go to Negeri Sembilan, because it's a matriarchal society. And people need to recognize that, this has been a long time, a system of governance that has worked so well, and to welcome me home. So, just to answer the question, when Tan Sri wanted me to go to Negeri Sembilan as the state legal advisor, he said to me, "Don't decide, Mary. Go home and ask your husband, because you're going to need his support. You're going to leave home, you're going to leave family, and you have to make very hard choices." And that's the correct message, because I think you need that support. It's a family support.
So I think for our listeners who may not come from Malaysia, that might have been quite difficult to understand, but Malaysia being, with its history, etc., is still... it's still run, I suppose, along racial lines. And just going back to Negeri Sembilan, so my parents are from Negeri Sembilan. So
you understand all the dynamics.
I come from, a matriarchal society, and I understand completely what it means to have, strong male support, because I see that in my father and the 4 girls that he raised. So I think just, you've mentioned Tan Sri Mokhtar Abdullah. You mentioned the support that you got from your husband. And I think that that also you got that support when you decided to go back to school, as you said it.
Absolutely.
And when you went to Australia to pursue your master's because you wanted a change and you wanted rejuvenation, as you said it, you had 2 young daughters at the time, and you moved to Australia, and I suppose your husband stayed on in Malaysia.
He did.
I appreciate that it was all difficult, and it probably was, you'd have to wrestle, and I think women generally beat ourselves up a lot more when it comes to making decisions like this. But did you, was there any, what sort of support, what sort of comments or judgment did you get from society at that time? Or was that not something that really bothered you?
I think people were amazed that I had been already in service for so long and still wanting to go back to school. People were amazed that I had little kids and wanting to do that. And when I identified myself, and I'm not embarrassed to say that, look, I've got 2 kids and I want to do this, people appreciate and people do accommodate. And the master's program that I signed up for had classes in the evenings because master's was an option for people who have decided to go move on to another facet in their lives and who want to change. So most of the classes were run in the evenings, recognizing that. And that then gave me a lot of time to spend with my children. So I bundled 2 kids into the car, drove around Perth, went to the most unknown places, made friends with everybody because, people will always warm up, see a mother with 2 kids. They will always just want to help. And then I'll go into department stores and stores, and then with these kids, and people will reach out to you. Humanity is so respectable and so heartwarming. All you need to do is just give others a chance, and they reached out to me. I absorbed it all, benefited totally from all that experience. My kids at one point were becoming so Australian-like because they were picking up accents. They were going to school. They started going to school. So that gave me a couple of hours of me time. So I had, because of the way the course was structured, I actually had rejuvenation in, 3/4 of its sense, in that I got myself back. I relearned the law. I learned deeper, and my family became a different, a better unit to me. So I wouldn't say that everybody needs to do masters at that particular point in time, but I would encourage that. I would encourage that. But I think people must have greater faith in the next person. I mean, if I saw you needing help, Aisha, I would anytime.
So I guess that leads on to, if as a young woman now entering the legal field, would there be any sort of tips that you would give them? I mean, I think we've made progress, right, in the last few years, in terms of trying to have more diversity, more inclusivity, and more equity. But I do think that there's still a lot more to be done, and I think younger girls do find it still quite difficult. And your story, it may have happened, a few years ago, but I think it still resonates. So I wonder if you had any tips or any words of advice for young women entering the legal profession today.
I do. And I have additional advice for women who are not, for Malaysians in particular, who are not Muslims. And if you're thinking of legal public service, first of all, I want to encourage them to enter the public service. I have this very odd view that the public service, any public service, should always be helmed by the best in society in that profession. I don't know, I have this particular ideal. The Attorney General's chambers for me in Malaysia, then, and I still think, should comprise the best of the best. It should lead the way. It shouldn't be people who are left over from any options. So because Malaysia is such a cosmopolitan population, I like to encourage women who are not Malays, Muslims, to take up public service. It may not pay as well, but when you get into the right division, it is a very humbling service because you truly serve the country. Don't think of yourself as being so clever, being the best. It's the fact that because the public needs to see a diverse public service, the public itself needs to see a diverse public service, in this case the Attorney General's chambers. I like to encourage non-Malays, non-Muslims, the minority communities in Malaysia, who have had such good education. Money will come, and money that is paid to the civil servants is more than adequate. So to encourage them to enter and to stay the course.
But would that not require some sort of support also, or encouragement from, the government or the establishment? Because if I wanted to join public service and I feel that there's no room for progression, or if I feel I am going to be a minority, then as much as I want to do good, I may have difficulty convincing myself that this is the right career path. So if there is seemingly no support, do you think that maybe the government or the AG's chambers itself could do a little bit more to try and encourage our bright non-Malays to join service?
I think, first of all, the Attorney General's chambers needs to section itself out of the general intake mechanism that's out there. In order to enter the public service, there is a very, very long application process. I hear people are in that wait list for even the first interview for anything up to 2 years. And that's too long a wait. People need to move on in their lives after having just come out from university. So I think there must be a recognition that the Attorney General chambers must operate on a different platform. So the recruitment exercise should be different. Secondly, when they enter the service, and I'm talking to the non-Malay applicants, everyone's good. And I like to think that when the government they take the best. I go back to what I said about who should be in the AG's chambers. So everyone is good. And here then, your race, once you get in, the race is immaterial. The race is immaterial. It's absolutely on merit. And once you get on merit, it doesn't matter that you haven't gone up because you think you should have been there and you've been bypassed because you're a Malay. I think it's a recognition that it is on merit, and you must encourage that merit conversation. It once you get in. And the fact that doors have been opened to me and that the landscape has changed shows that it is not on race anymore. We just need somebody, who probably had the qualifications that I had at that particular time. And I recall what the late Tan Sri said when I asked him. I said, Tan Sri, am I just going to be the window dressing for you? I'm the only Chinese non-Malay state legal advisor. And his response to me was, no, Mary, I just need somebody who can speak Malay like you do. So it's not just the legal qualifications, it's just merits have many nuances.
And I think that's right, because when we talk about promotion, or there needs to be a pool,
the availability,
and I feel like it is a little bit of a cyclical or a thing. If you don't see yourself in those positions, you think the door is closed to you. But when there's no one there to choose from, then you have a smaller pool of, women. And so I guess, could we be doing more? Do you think that maybe the government or at a younger level, at our school level, at the academic level, to try and encourage?
I think the young must be encouraged to open up, to take part. I think moods and these kind of intern options are certainly a great help, because you must find your voice early and you must be encouraged to articulate. Law, by its very nature, requires the audio and not just the visual. So we continue to stress on oral submissions. And I think that's the beauty of its advocacy, its persuasion, and it's how the tone of the voice is employed or deployed. So to me, we should encourage universities to look at skills and not just looking at the hard letter of the law. That can be taken care of. But alongside that, students must be encouraged to pick up a lot of other skills that complete them. And I started by taking in interns to let them see how and what is required out there. What we're looking for as a judge, that it is not just... the best submission is not what is said, it's how it's said. And they can never learn it unless they're in the courtroom or in that space listening for themselves.
Or if they attend one of your advocacy courses.
Oh, absolutely.
Was there, when we talk about lessons, was there anything that perhaps you thought you wish you knew earlier in your career?
I wish all these things, even these kind of podcasts, I wish I had met you early in school. Life would not have been so miserable. But this is something I need to perhaps put out there. It really doesn't matter which university it is. Not everybody can get into Oxbridge. Not everybody can get into NUS. And not everybody can get into MU. I came from Leeds, and people say, Leeds, what's that place? But mind you, Keir Starmer's from there now. We're talking. And, it might be slow, but we all do get there. So actually, it's not so much the university. That's a great help. But it's yourself. So I wish I had a lot more help. But I think those hard years just made me look deeper. As I said, I had family, I had siblings who was just full of support for me. The hard years made me who I am today.
Yeah. And I think the message there is probably to just embrace it and stay the course. I'm looking at the time, but I also just wanted to ask maybe a little bit more of a personal question, a bit more reflective perhaps. So, and I'm just channeling my Lauren Laverne. But if I could ask you to imagine that you are stranded on a desert island and you can only bring a limited number of items, what are the songs or musical artists that you would want to have with you? What records would you want to have with you that perhaps, that you want to take with you onto this desert island?
Well, Aisha, I'm not going to be able to bring any records or record players. That blooming island is just going to be so bare. and it will be so inward looking, but there will be songs that taken me through my life. And one of those first songs that comes to mind, you'll be surprised, it's Carole King's song called You've Got a Friend. Every time when I'm down, when I hear somebody having problems, or when I look at the woman and say, why don't we all just sing this song, Carole King, You've Got a Friend. You've got a friend. It's so beautiful. It resonates in so many levels. And it says winter, spring, summer, autumn. And it's so beautiful. And then, of course, I've got right at the other end, Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury, his song called We Are the Champions. It doesn't matter whether you're who you are, where you're from. You just tell yourself you're a champion. And Freddie had such a hard life, but he was such a beautiful person, so talented. He went far too early. But Freddie, that legacy, thank you. You know, he's anything from Bohemian Rhapsody, a song that encompasses so many religions, so many languages. People don't realize that in that one song, Bohemian Rhapsody, there is Bismillah in there. There is a Jewish phrase as well, you know. But the song that I love from him is We Are the Champions, my friend. You know, and I think that's absolutely true. You need to lift yourself up. And that's what I think I will do, that I'm a champion on this island, and I'll keep going on.
And if I can just sum that up, I think that's neatly summed up all of what we talked about this morning. You know, you need support. You need people around you. Ask for help. Look for friends. And they can come in different forms. They can come, you know, not just family, but people you work with, and strangers at a department store in Australia. And then that self-belief within ourselves. And I think those are the messages that I've got from you today. And I think for our younger listeners wanting to pursue a career in law, that's probably the messages that I would take away, and I hope they do too.
It's true, Asya. It started with me recognizing the fact that I wasn't good academically, and I wasn't. People look at me and they don't believe that I didn't excel academically. I could be third, and I was third from the back, the last in class, the third last in class. And then I moved 20, 30 positions up in class. And when I did, I realized that I was capable of it. I couldn't get into universities locally. And then I said, I'm better than that. I gave myself a chance. I gave myself some hope, some belief. I worked at it. But I didn't understand law. I went through law school. I went through the bar. I got through the grades. And it was only after I started working and putting law into practice that it then came alive. And then I realized it's how you talk about law. And if I had, this probably should have been my answer, if I could do things again, I would teach law differently. I would be able to explain law differently, the principles differently, because law is all about your life, how life is regulated by law, and people don't realize it. And the law that we have in place is written manifestations of those principles that we live by. It's logic, it's common sense, it's decency. And if that had been properly taught to me, so no disrespect to my lecturers, I think it would have been quite easy to get far better grades than I got, I believe. So you need to give yourself a chance. As I said, it doesn't really matter whether you come from a very small town like me, a small town called Moi, and we've got very many people who have excelled since, and I'm sure there'll be many, many more. But just, yeah, you're absolutely right. Self-belief, support, and I think a huge sense of humility. I think it mustn't let you get to your head.
Then I think, and I think those are good, wise words and principles to live by.
Thanks, Aisha.
So, thank you. I think that's all we've got time for today. I think as we conclude today's episode, I am reminded of Justice Lim's unwavering commitment to justice, legal education, and the betterment of our legal system. We talked a little bit about that. And I think your legacy perhaps is one of resilience and a genuine desire to make a difference. So thank you, Justice Lim, so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us. And to our listeners, I think the message that I got today is that the pursuit of justice is a collective endeavor, and I think one that requires empathy, integrity, and continuous learning. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep listening to Maxwell Unplugged, where we bring you more inspiring stories of women. Thank you very much.
Thank you.